Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life.
Welcome to the Daily Influence. I'm Gregg Koleno, your host. Thank you for making us a part of your routine. In this podcast, we explore the stories of amazing individuals who spread positivity and make a difference. Join us as we uncover the inspiration, challenges, and impact of their journeys. Today, we have my friend, client, Bryce Fender from WilmInvest joining us. Bryce, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm honored to be here and really looking forward to our conversation and what we get into. It's going to be fun.
It will be fun, as always. Bryce, can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So, again, my name is Bryce Fender. I'm a Wilmington, Delaware-based social entrepreneur. I've been doing this type of work since even before I realized I was doing it, since I was about 15, 16 years old. Maybe I won't go into like a too full life background, but I really got my start in Scouts and Boy Scouts. Now it's just called Scouts, which I think is a great thing. As a kid, I was about 4 years old, tagging along with my brother and my dad and going on camping trips and stuff. And that really introduced me to problem solving and resourcefulness. And that, in addition to watching my parents run and grow their own business, they had a private jet repair company. My dad would go load up his truck and go drive out to all these cities and go fix these airplanes. And my mom would coordinate paperwork and books and logistics. And he'd come back at night. So all growing up, I kind of thought it was like normal, quote unquote, to like just have parents that just work for themselves and just kind of, they didn't have an office. They just kind of went and did their thing. And even my grandfather, he had his own business. He sold sheds in Delaware. Was one of the first, actually, I think was the first person that ever sold sheds in Wilmington. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's the claim to fame. And of course, the last name Fender, the guitars and all that. So, yeah. So I've been chasing and executing an entrepreneurship really in a hardcore sense since I was about 16, 15. And was really introduced to it from a much younger age than that. But now back in college, my partner Joel and I, we co-founded WilmInvest, and we are a social impact real estate investment firm. And we're also branching out in a couple different categories right now that might be a little bit too early to get into. Long and the short, we're getting into becoming a community development organization and social impact, real estate investing being a core pillar of that. So a lot of things are changing. We founded that back in 2017. I've also done personal consulting roles. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at a couple local nonprofit accelerators. I've worked as a real estate agent, as a social impact consultant, a whole bunch of different things that has all led towards a personal journey and towards an intentional career fulfillment as being a social entrepreneur that prioritizes, creating housing and creating jobs.
Thank you for that, Bryce. I am so excited to have you join us today because you are the exact epitome of what someone with a positive influence is. You've had such a positive influence on so many people in the Wilmington area. And I know this personally from all the work that we've done together. And I think it's amazing what you do, what WilmInvest does, and how you've just really helped so many people really on their journey of life. So thank you for all you've done.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So Bryce, what inspired you to start spreading positivity and making a difference in the lives of others?
I remember very, very specifically, kind of all growing up in Wilmington, in Delaware. I grew up kind of on the outside of the city, in the suburbs, so to speak. And I remembered elementary school, early middle school, the friends I had and the families that I'd be around, nobody wanted to go into the city of Wilmington. The most we do is go to a Blue Rocks game, which is the minor league team, and drive right back out. People wouldn't go to the riverfront. People wouldn't go downtown. People stayed away. And early on, I saw this giant disparity between going into the city versus living outside of the city. Now, in my 7th grade year, because I went to a K through 8 school, my parents had this idea. They said, "Hey, Bryce, we're going to put you into Conrad Schools of Science," which was a 6 through 12 school, for your 8th grade year to make sure you get into a good high school. Because Conrad was a good high school. This whole theme of good schools, bad schools, that's a whole different story. But anyway, my parents transferred me to this new school for my 8th grade year, and that school was closer to the city of Wilmington. And I went into that school, and just speaking honest, quite honestly, there was a culture shock. I, for the first time in my life, was surrounded by kids that grew up differently than I did, kids that grew up in the city, kids that had to work before soccer practice in the morning. And that's actually what kind of, other than I think kind of these non-spoken things, these things I just kind of absorbed just by living life as a suburban kid, and then going into a place that's closer to the city and seeing kids that grew up in the city, kids that grew up that had struggled with poverty, that had problems. It all came to a moment. It all came to a realization when it was my 8th grade year, and it was a summer soccer practice, because I was playing for the high school team. Actually, no, it was my 9th grade year. And my friend, it was like practice started at like 7 a.m. And my friend came to practice. He had a bag, but he wasn't dressed in soccer clothes. And I said, "Hey, man, I don't even know why I asked this. I probably shouldn't have looking back, but still, I was like, hey, what's in your bag?" He was like, "Oh, I have to change for practice. I had work this morning." And it was 7 a.m. And he was only a year older than me. And it kind of clicked. And it kind of realized, I was like, oh, wait, his family has real problems. I've never had to experience something like that, and this just frustration of disparity just kind of really started to brew up in me, and I just had never sat well with me. And that experience, along with I went down to a leadership conference in 10th grade, where I was surrounded by a leader from every other school. There was a lot of school prejudice at the same time too. People thought if you go to X school, you're Y kind of kid, and all those stereotypes are just kind of shattered. So I came back from that conference, and I was like, "Hey, this isn't right." So we started a interscholastic student government group to have a student government for the whole school district, to kind of just put events together and have talent shows and dances and other service projects and other activities to actually bring students together. So those early experiences of just kind of experiencing the disparity kind of between these things, like, just really, it didn't sit right with me. And that started the steps towards actively, I thought it was like politics at the time, but I realized early in college, it was like, oh, wait, no, this is entrepreneurship. This is why my dad said, "No, I'm not, you really shouldn't study politics. You need to study business." I didn't see what he saw at the time, but it makes sense now.
What a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. I love how you looked at it as an opportunity to bring humans together from, different socioeconomics, different beliefs, different schools, whatever it may be, so that you all can get to know each other and have a positive influence on each other. That's awesome, Bryce. Can you tell us about a specific moment or experience where you felt that you made a positive impact on someone's life?
Yeah, sure. And before I do that, I think I should probably give a more thorough explanation of what WilmInvest actually is. So
Sure.
yeah. So WilmInvest, what we do is, long and the short, we acquire vacant and abandoned properties in the city of Wilmington, Delaware. Before we started the company, this article called Wilmington, Delaware, Murder Town, USA came out, and it talked all about crime and vacant properties and blight and all of that. So my partner and I, we saw that there were a lot of vacant and abandoned properties in the city. We also realized that there were all these government and nonprofit housing organizations that help families pay rent and pay bills, and help subsidize these different things, but also provide social support and case management, social work, and resources. We went and talked to these organizations that had the funding, had the availability to provide these resources, and they said, "Yeah, we can do all this. There's funding there, there's resources there, but there's no landlords that want to work with us. There's no real estate owners that want to work with us." So we realized we need to make a real estate company that specializes in these types of housing programs, these types of special housing programs. So that's what we were able to build, and that's what WilmInvest is. We call it social impact real estate investing, and that is we acquire vacant and abandoned properties, we fix them up, and then we partner with these government housing with these government and nonprofit housing organizations. And basically the core value of what we've seen is we're able to strategically align our property management infrastructure with their case management and social work infrastructure to be able to uncover and get to more root issues of what a family might be experiencing that's contributing to repeated instances of housing instability and or homelessness. So one example to answer the question of what we got at with that is very, very early on, back in, I believe it was probably early 2020, late 2019, we had a partnership with the state of Delaware to do transitional housing. We were taking families out of their shelter system, putting them in our housing and doing exactly that. We housed the families. The state did case management and social work. I got a call from the client, the tenant who was living in our home, and she said, "Hey, there's all these bugs. There's all this stuff going on in the house. Can you come over and take a look at it?" The case managers let me know, and they said, "Hey, you need to go fix your house. The house has bugs. You got to go make sure that's taken care of." Okay, cool. Run over. I go and I realize, and I walk in the house and I see there's chicken wings on the floor, and there's dishes stacked up a mile high, and there's all of these. There's stuff going on. So we kind of, the tenant and the client and I, we sit down and say, "Hey, so this is what's going on, but let's think about the root issue, the cause." And what I had known, what we had learned is that the individual living in the house had experienced homelessness for 3 generations in a row. Living out of shelters, living out of churches, living out of XYZ, ABC situation, things that may sound very basic to a lot of us. These things didn't click, and we were able to say, all right, if we throw these things away, and here's how we do dishes, here's how you take soap and take thing and dry it out. You don't leave food around for bugs to have. And while that was great, that was a breakthrough moment, and we were able to really communicate that information back to the case manager, the social worker, and say, "Hey, this is what's going on." The real kicker, the real win in that was like a year or two later is getting just a call from a housing manager or a property manager saying, "Hey, you house so and so. How was that? We're about to accept her rental application." So we're able to help work with other people to help that family that had experienced homelessness for 3 generations get to a point of self-sustained housing because she wanted it in her heart. There were just these barriers that were in place that we needed to uncover and work together from both a real estate owner, manager, and an agent perspective to work with the case management and social work on the other side to get to the root issue rather than just write a violation and send a bill and all that, yada, yada, yada. No, but we worked together to get to the root cause. And that's kind of when that happened. And the case manager said, yeah, we like you guys because you guys work with us. That's when it hit me. That's when I realized that's what our unique value is. Our mentor, Vince, he always told us, you'll never understand your unique value until your customer tells you. And like in that moment, the customer told us, and it all clicked. It all made sense.
Bryce, there's so much in that I love so much. I just love how by getting to the root cause and figuring out what the issue was and teaching your client the way to do things that he or she never learned before because of the past, the way they were brought up. And they didn't have they had parents, but they didn't have the environment to learn to do these things. And you took the opportunity to teach them that. So kudos to you. What advice would you give to someone who wants to make a difference, but may not know where to start?
There's this beautiful TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and to start with why. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I've come to realize that when he says buy, he doesn't mean purchase. He doesn't always mean purchase. Buy is transfer of resources, right? Resources could be time, attention, gifts, donation, connections, anything. Any action to influence, right? Somebody else to make is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And of course, we can know that. We can write that down or put it on a wall or just read it to ourselves every day, but that doesn't really help us understand our why. So if there's somebody that wants to start to make influence and start to do that, but doesn't know where to start, I would really say you got to really look inward. I think I joke sometimes that I have a management degree, business management degree from Wilmington or from University of Delaware. And when I got to the higher level courses, I started to realize, wait a minute, all my professors are psychology doctors. It's like, wait a minute, I have a psychology degree in disguise. And I jokingly take that a bit too far sometimes. but it's like my inner quote unquote psychologist is coming out, and I'm like, well, people, you need to look into your past, your childhood, your the moments. What keeps you up at night? What problem that exists in the world does really just makes you angry, makes you emotional, makes you fearful, but inspired and optimistic at the same time? What out there in the world, what problem that exists gets you going? We need to start telling kids rather than, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? No, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? I tell a lot of the clients that I work with, it's like every time that you spend $1, you're investing into a solution to a problem that you have. So as entrepreneurs, we need to find and validate real problems that real people have that there can be a value change for. And figuring out that value change for a social impact mindset or a straight up for-profit mindset, that's a whole thing. It's its own conversation on its own. But it starts in understanding what problem you're actually passionate about. And then once you know this problem, once you core, what's your core, you've explored your heart and your mind and your soul to deeply understand that intimate why, and you're able to peel back layers of that onion and really start to get to the tangible. Okay, yes, I'm really passionate and I really want to help solve this big problem that exists in the world. But then you got to connect that back to what's in my means. What resources, what connections, what people do I know that are in my circles or in people or that are in circles close to me? People who are solving that problem, people who are working to solve that problem. How can I form and develop relationships with them? Right? How can I align myself to develop relationships and just say, hey, this is my why. I know this is your why. Maybe that's not what you say verbatim, but say, I'm really, you connect on that level for it. And 99 times out of 100, that person will say, yeah, oh yeah, I can help you with that. Then you have an you have a relationship. You might have a mentor that can help you, point you towards the directions, you either gaining a hard skill or certification or whatever that might look like to be able to have the skills to be able to come under an organization or start an organization to help solve that problem, right? So that's, long story short, that's what I would say. You need to know your why. You need to know why you know your why. You need to feel your why with your mind, your soul, your heart, with all of it. And then you need to get a little bit more specific on who around you is solving that problem, right? You'll convert the why into a problem. Who around you is solving that problem? How do you get in front of them? How do you develop relationships with them? And then how do you ask for help and see where it goes from there?
Perfectly said, Bryce. That was amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to.
Bryce, how do you maintain your own sense of positivity and motivation, especially during challenging times or when you're faced with negativity?
Yeah, and I get asked this question a lot. A lot of friends that I have, they'll be like, "One, what do you do?" And two, how do you do it? And three, how do you juggle all that stuff? And it's like I kind of see it all as it's not work, as building, right? I've been doing this. I've been very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do entrepreneurship since I was for the past 10, 11, 12 years now. Whether in whatever capacity you want to define that is, but the sense is just kind of creating organizations, partnering with friends to be able to help solve real problems that exist in the world. And what keeps me going, even when things get hard, is from a couple different avenues, from a couple different parallel lanes. Is it sounds cliche, but just going back to that why, just really thinking about my friend in the dugout, getting ready for soccer practice, the early moments of the interscholastic student government group, bringing everybody together, thinking about other people that I was inspired by, like Kat Lindroth. She's probably the first social entrepreneur that I saw in person when I was in high school, and just really being really inspired by the work that she did with Summer Learning Collaborative and helping start Social Contract and other organizations. And then I also really always think about the leases that we would sign with families coming out of shelters and handing the keys, and the little kids coming up and hugging my legs and saying, "We got a house, we got a house, we got a house." And it's just those sweet, tender moments, those small wins. My mentor, Vince DeFelice, he always said, you need to count the small wins. And I found that by making it a habit to count those small wins, whenever you have a day that's like, even yesterday, it wasn't a bad day per se, but just like at the end of the day, I just kind of felt like just a bit frazzled. It was like, there's so much to do. What's going on? But it's like you just breathe, take a step back, pray, go to small group, do whatever it takes to just kind of put everything into perspective and say, this is why I'm doing what I do. This is the direction of what I can build. It takes a lot to kind of reset yourself and always put every struggle that you're having back into the mindset, back into the perspective of what are we building? What are we going towards? And by I think just strengthening that mental muscle, and also just strengthening your soul, for me, a lot of it is faith. I go to church, I go to small group, I go to Bible studies. I love it. I have a really strong community of believers that I work with. And, those relationships too really, really keeps me going. And I think just having faith, believing that there's purpose in this world, believing that there's more to just life, that we're created and we're put here for a purpose, that helps. That immensely helps me too. In many, many ways, but it's, believing, but also knowing where you're going and being able to, just put all these small things into their perspectives and thinking, if we can solve this small problem, we can take this impact and take it this much farther, Yeah.
Purpose is so important. Perspective is so important. That is great advice. Thank you, Bryce. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, and again, it's all rooted in the why.
Yeah.
If you're unclear about the why, if you're building things without being founded, you're rooted in the why. When you have a bad day, that foundation isn't there. That's why it's so important to know it sounds so cliche, and you read it and you Google it, it's everywhere, but it's like, it's not said enough.
Take some time and figure out your why.
Yeah.
Bryce, what message or words of encouragement would you like to share with our listeners who aspire to make a positive difference in the world?
I think that entrepreneurship is glamorized, especially with the TikTok and the Instagram and the social media and all that. I think it's glamorized. I think that while this might not, on the front end, sound super inspiring, I think we need to be real and honest about how darn hard it is. And I think by knowing how hard it is, by accepting how hard it is, by feeling and going through how hard it is, there can be inspiration found out of it. Like, nobody looks at the top of a really tall mountain and says, man, it'd be a lot of fun to climb that. Like, nobody at first. It's like a mental muscle to be able to like hiking, to be able to like mountaineering, to be able to like going up a mountain. The idea of it being at the top of it, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that'd be fun. But actually starting to do it and realizing how hard it is, I think that's the key of where a lot of that inspiration can come from. So just keep going. Just keep going. Like back to the mountain metaphor is like, yeah, the idea of it at the end of it is going to be awesome, but we have to understand and also recognize that you don't know what you don't know, right? So you need to uncover. It took me years to understand what that really means. You don't know. Like, say it to yourself slowly. Write it down slowly. You don't know what you do not know. So once we know what we don't know, that's like the next step. And we're able to kind of understand, okay, well, and now I know this, and this changes my perspective that I wish I had back at the beginning. I wish I knew that to climb this mountain, I needed spikes and I needed snowshoes. I didn't know that. If I knew that earlier, I could have brought them and made sure I summited it. I didn't have to turn around and try again. Scouts always taught me, like, be prepared. Like, that's the Scout motto, be prepared. And it's like, that's so true in business. And like, honestly, I learned so much in Scouts that I use to this day, every single day. That's why the mountain metaphor makes so much sense to me. But I think we need to be real with ourselves and honest about how hard it is. Because if we're real and honest about how hard it is, that can prepare us to uncover what we don't know, learn and understand that, have that change our perspective when we're getting, or even before we get started, right? But then understanding how hard it is and understanding you need to uncover what you don't know, and understanding that's going to change your perspective. You need to stay lean and adaptable to new information, right? Because ideas, building a business based off of an idea, I personally believe in this, and I think other people have different opinions, but my personal opinion is that it will lead to failure. You can't build a business on an idea. You need to build a business you need to convert that idea into a problem that exists in the world. But you need to validate that problem. Just because you think a problem doesn't exist doesn't mean it does. You can't build something off of something that's not real. But that's when I say uncover what you don't know. That's what I mean. So all of those things will change your perspective. You need to be adaptable. And then finally, to keep going up that mountain, right? Once you learn you need the snowshoes, you turn around, go back, get the snowshoes, go back up. You need to mentally fortify yourself that my mentor Vince, you always quoted Winston Churchill, and I quote this way too much, but it's so true. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. It's like successful entrepreneurship is a combination of not failing hard enough to the point where you're going to go like you can't continue, right? Not for financial reasons. Like that's putting yourself in a position where you're not over leveraging yourself to if the worst happens, you're toast. But then 2, learning from those mistakes and continuing. It's like true failure. Ooh, hello, balloons. True failure in my eyes is giving up when you didn't need to give up. And that's a personal choice. That's a personal thing. It's very, very personal. Who am I to say, oh, you failed? It's not one other person's place to say. So I hope that answers the question.
Definitely answered the question. Thank you. Bryce, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story and your advice. It was very valuable. If you want to get in touch with Bryce, the best way to do so is through his email, and we'll put that in the show notes, but it's brycefender@wilminvest.com. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Influence. We hope that you found today's episode inspiring. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and share it with your family, friends, coworkers to spread that positive influence. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more stories of positivity with you. Thank you for being part of our community. Have a great day. Bye-bye.